battery is dead.
Salam. Salam guys, I know that we can't physically meet in class right now because of the whole situation that's going on, but that doesn't mean that we still can't benefit from what we were talking about before. So basically we made it through the whole entire surah, so right now we're going to do an overview of everything that we talked about. So as we discussed before, Surah Yasin is split into 3 different sections. We're going to talk about each of these 3 sections individually throughout the video. So the first section of the surah mainly focuses on the story of the 3 messengers. So Allah describes a town in Surah Yasin, but He doesn't give us really any context because, well, that's not really important. So what we know about the town is that it was filled with disbelievers. So Allah sent down 2 messengers, not 1 but 2. This is really important because it really shows the status of the people if they needed 2 messengers, not even just 1. And long story short, the town rejects them. They said things along the lines of, "You're nothing except for humans just like us, why should we believe you're special?" If all of this was true, God would have sent an angel, not just a human like you. So Allah sends down a 3rd messenger to reinforce them again. So something really important happens here. Allah sends 3 separate messengers and the people still don't believe. There's something interesting here. The fact that Allah sent 3 different people to guide this town and that they were still misguided does not in any form show that Allah failed. In fact, it shows that some people just will not be guided no matter what. So the main ayah that basically summarizes this whole entire section is this.
وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ مِّنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ.
No matter what the people were told, no matter what promises they were given, no matter what the circumstance, they would have never believed anyway. This is interesting to think about because, alhamdulillah, all of us are Muslim, but it could still apply to us. If you've ever had an argument or altercation with someone and they just don't listen to you, this applies here as well. Allah sent 3 people with proof, with all of what they needed, and the people still didn't listen. They just kept making excuses for themselves, except for 1 man. The difference between that 1 man in the town is that that man was open-minded. There's a difference between being open-minded and susceptible to foolish things. Some people are too open-minded and they don't know when to differentiate between listening to someone and having their own opinion. This man was wise enough to listen and ponder and think about what they were saying and process it for himself, and then make a decision, and he made the right one. And when he entered Jannah, there wasn't any animosity between him and the people of the town. Instead, he said, "I wish my people could have known," and he really wanted them there with him. So the whole point of this first section of Surah Yasin is basically closed-mindedness and how some people remained misguided or remained wrong in any situation because they're not willing to think about things, and it's from themselves that they don't want to change. Now from that, Allah leads into the second section of Surah Yasin. Basically, the second section is all about the miracles of the universe that Allah implemented for us to see as signs. Allah lists a lot of things here, and I could sit and talk about each and every single one of them, but I want to talk about the impact. In fact, I'll just have everything going across the bottom of the screen as I talk, so you could pause and read the translation as I'm talking if you want. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a few years ago. His name is Kenny. Kenny converted to Islam when he was in high school. This was one of the first times that I met him, so I was really interested into hearing why he converted in the first place. Without thinking, Kenny immediately said the scientific miracles. It obviously was a little bit more than that, and we talked about it for a while, but he said the main thing that even got him thinking about it in the first place was the scientific miracles. It kind of doesn't make sense of Allah telling a story and then kind of just moving completely differently to talking about scientific miracles, but it actually makes complete sense because Allah's listing all of the things that were around the people of the town that they chose to ignore. They had plants, they had night and day, they had all the things that Allah lists, and they still didn't choose to look at it. Literally, anything you look at in this whole entire universe could be a sign. Like, look, come on now. But that man from Surah Yasin and my friend Kenny both were open-minded enough to just ponder about the scientific miracles, to think about things. All of the scientific miracles in the Quran are absolutely astonishing and really cool. But if we don't implement the thought process of thinking about these things for more than face value, then that's all they are, is just cool. So basically, to summarize the whole second section of Surah Yasin, it's all about the miracles that Allah put for us on earth to look at and how we have to be aware of them. And finally, for the last section of Surah Yasin, Allah talks about the Day of Judgment. Allah talks about 2 groups of people, the believers and the disbelievers. Allah talks about the blissfulness that the believers will be experiencing during this time. Once the believers have been judged and been told to enter Jannah in peace, it's nothing except for tranquility for them. And on the other hand, the disbelievers have a really bad experience filled with psychological torture. On both sides of the spectrum, believers and disbelievers, They're both going to experience things that we right now just can't comprehend. The believers on one side are going to experience Jannah. Allah tries to explain it in the Quran, but it's not meant for us to understand. It's beyond our level of thinking, although Allah explains it for us. On the other hand, with the disbelievers, there's one ayah that I want to talk about, which is this one.
وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون.
So while the disbelievers are going through the day of judgment, Allah tells them, separate yourselves from each other. This is really important. A lot of these people, the reason why they ended up in their position is because they would constantly make excuses for themselves. Whether they'd put the blame on other people or the blame on their circumstances or the blame on something, they blamed something other than themselves. They never took themselves accountable. If they had just done that, they would have been able to own up to their mistakes, repent, and they'd be on the other side. But the problem is that they would make excuses for themselves and convince themselves that they're not doing anything wrong. So when Allah tells them to separate themselves from each other, this is something really scary to them. They now have no one else to put the blame on. They now can't say, oh, at least they're here with me too. They can't point at things anymore and blame it for their faults when they're being judged for themselves. It's no longer the fact that something really weird specific happened that forced them to do something that they talked themselves out of believing, but it's now just the person they are. Another idea of what this ayah could mean is when the Muslims separate themselves from the disbelievers. There's going to be a point when there's a big group of Muslims that are walking towards Jannah. And some scholars believe this ayah is talking about that. People who thought they were Muslim, but in reality weren't. This should really scare us because it could be any one of us. They used to stand in the same prayer lines as the people that they're getting separated from. They used to go to the same masajid. They used to do all the same things, yet they're separated. The reason why is because these people were hypocrites. While they said that they believed, they didn't actually believe. And this could be seen through your actions when you're alone versus when you're in a big group of Muslims. So to recap for this third section, Allah basically tells us to hold ourselves accountable before we're held accountable and to be honest with ourselves instead of lying about being good people. So to summarize the whole surah, Allah kind of just maps out how our thought processes should be as Muslims. To hold ourselves accountable, to think for ourselves, to be open-minded, to ponder upon what Allah created. It's so easy to find signs anywhere, literally anywhere. Like this is just down the street from my house. So inshallah we could implement everything from Surah Yasin in our lives and benefit from it. And inshallah I get to see you guys in actual class soon. Assalamu alaikum.